Over the past 2 weeks, ranchers living in the valley near Skinwalker Ranch have begun reporting something disturbing. Several cattle have been found dead in open fields. At first glance, the animals appear untouched. No signs of a struggle, no tracks. But when the bodies are examined more closely, something strange becomes clear. The cattle show precise surgical cuts along parts of the body. Sections of tissue are missing, and almost no blood is found at the scene. Local authorities initially suspected predators, but predators leave evidence, tracks, scavenging, torn flesh. None of that was present. Instead, the cuts looked deliberate, clean, almost clinical. At the same time these discoveries were being reported, several residents in the area began seeing something unusual in the sky. Small lights, moving silently above the valley at night. Witnesses described the lights as glowing white or pale blue, sometimes one, sometimes several. They moved slowly across the sky before suddenly stopping, then accelerating away at impossible speed. Most of the sightings occurred within a few miles of Skinwalker Ranch, a location already known for decades of unexplained reports. Strange lights, unusual creatures, electronic disturbances. Because of the growing number of reports, the situation was escalated to the Private Anomaly Research Unit. Agents Daniel Mercer and Lana Jones were deployed to investigate the activity in the valley. When Mercer and Jones arrived in the valley the following afternoon, the landscape appeared quiet. Wide ranch land stretched out beneath the Utah sky. Fences, barns, cattle grazing in distant fields. Nothing about the place suggested anything unusual had happened there, but several ranchers had already agreed to speak with the agents. The first was a man named Tom Alvarez, who owned a small ranch, less than 2 miles from Skinwalker Ranch itself. Alvarez was the one who had discovered the most recent dead animal. He led Mercer and Jones out into one of his fields. The body of the cow had already been removed by local authorities, but the area where it had been found was still clearly visible. Dry grass flattened in a wide circle. Alvarez explained what he had seen that morning. The animal had been lying in the field exactly where they were standing. At first he thought it had simply died during the night, but when he got closer, he noticed something strange. Parts of the animal were missing, and the cuts looked too clean, almost like they had been made with surgical tools. Jones crouched down and studied the ground carefully. There were still no tracks, no signs of predators, nothing to explain how the animal had died. Then Alvarez mentioned something else, something he had seen the night before. Lights, moving silently above the valley. Alvarez said the lights first appeared shortly after midnight. At first, he assumed they were aircraft. There are occasional military flights that pass through the region, but these lights were different. They moved slowly across the sky, without making any sound. Then they stopped, completely still, hovering above the valley. Alvarez watched them for several minutes from the porch of his house. Then one of the lights suddenly shot upward and disappeared into the clouds. The others followed seconds later. He hadn't seen anything like it before. Mercer asked him if the lights appeared directly above the ranch. Alvarez shook his head. No, he said. They were closer to Skinwalker. That name had already appeared several times in the initial reports. Skinwalker Ranch had been the subject of unexplained sightings for decades. Strange animals, moving lights, electronic equipment, failing without explanation. Most scientists dismissed the stories as exaggerations, but the number of reports coming from the area had been unusually high in recent weeks. Jones finished examining the ground and stood up. Still no tracks, still no sign of predators. Whatever had killed the animal had left almost no trace behind. Before leaving the field, Mercer asked Alvarez one final question. Had he seen anything unusual besides the lights? Alvarez hesitated for a moment, then he pointed toward the hills beyond his ranch. There was something else, he said, just for a second. He explained that after the lights disappeared, he thought he saw something moving along the ridgeline, a large shape, too far away to make out clearly, but big enough that it didn't look like any normal animal. Jones glanced toward the hills Alvarez had indicated. The ridge stretched across the horizon nearly a mile away, empty, silent. Mercer thanked the rancher for his time, but as they walked back toward their vehicle, Jones noticed something else. Her handheld EM detector had begun to flicker. The device emitted a soft warning tone. Mercer looked at the screen. The readings were fluctuating, rapidly, almost as if something nearby was interfering with the signal. Jones frowned. There were no power lines in the area, no radio towers, nothing that should be causing electromagnetic interference. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the signal returned to normal. Mercer looked back toward the distant ridge. The valley had grown strangely quiet, and somewhere beyond those hills, the lights had been seen. By nightfall, the valley had grown completely still. Mercer and Jones returned to the same open field near Alvarez's ranch and began setting up several pieces of recording equipment. A portable camera system faced the ridgeline. The EM detector was mounted beside it. Jones also activated a small infrared scope to monitor the surrounding hills. The sky above the valley was perfectly clear. Thousands of stars stretched across the desert sky. For nearly an hour, nothing unusual happened. The equipment recorded normal readings. The valley remained silent. Then the EM detector flickered again. Jones glanced down at the display. The readings were rising, not dramatically, but steadily. Mercer looked toward the ridgeline. At first he thought it was just a star moving through the sky. Then he realized it was much lower. A pale light had appeared above the hills. The object moved slowly across the ridge, completely silent. Jones adjusted the infrared scope and focused on the light. The glow intensified for a moment. Then another light appeared behind it. Two bright orbs now drifted across the sky above the valley. Neither of them made any sound. Neither showed the blinking lights of an aircraft. Mercer kept watching. The two lights suddenly stopped moving, hovering above the ridgeline. The EM detector began emitting a steady tone. Jones checked the camera recording. The lights were clearly visible now. Then something else appeared, just beneath the ridgeline. A large, dark shape moved slowly along the top of the hill. Jones adjusted the zoom. The figure remained partially hidden by the darkness, but it was clearly too large to be a normal animal. The shape paused for a moment, almost as if it had noticed the lights above it. Then the two glowing orbs suddenly accelerated upward. Within seconds, they disappeared into the night sky. The EM detector immediately dropped back to normal levels. Mercer kept his eyes on the ridgeline. The large shape had also stopped moving. For several seconds, the valley returned to complete silence. Then the shape turned and slowly disappeared over the hill. Out of sight. Jones lowered the scope. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Whatever had just happened in the valley had involved more than one unknown presence. For several minutes, Mercer and Jones remained where they were, watching the ridgeline. The lights did not return. The valley slowly settled back into silence. Jones reviewed the camera footage they had just recorded. The glowing orbs were clearly visible moving across the sky. But the dark shape along the ridge was harder to identify. The infrared camera had captured movement. A large figure crossing the hill. but the distance and darkness made it impossible to determine exactly what it was. Mercer looked toward the ridge again. The hills now appeared completely empty. If something had been there, it was gone. Jones powered down the recording equipment. The EM detector showed normal readings once more. Whatever had caused the interference had disappeared. At the same moment, the lights vanished. Before leaving the valley, Mercer took one last look across the dark landscape. Skinwalker Ranch lay somewhere beyond the hills. For decades, the area had been associated with strange reports, unusual creatures, mysterious lights, and unexplained disturbances that seemed to appear and disappear without warning. Most investigators who studied the region came away with the same conclusion. The valley contained more questions than answers. In the weeks following Mercer and Jones's visit, ranchers in the area continued reporting strange activity. Additional lights were seen moving across the sky, and 2 more cattle were discovered dead in nearby fields. Local authorities were never able to determine what had caused the mutilations, nor could they explain the lights that had appeared above the valley. The recordings gathered by the Private Anomaly Research Unit were later archived as part of an ongoing investigation, but no official explanation was ever provided. Whatever was moving through the skies above the valley, and whatever had been seen along the ridge that night, remains unknown. After hours, transmission Private Anomaly Research Unit, Case File 003, Location, Valley near Skinwalker Ranch, Status, Unresolved.